I'm here with Hal Christensen of Quick Competence. Hal is a world expert in just-in-time performance support, among other things, and we're really pleased to have him here. So Hal, thanks for being here.
Oh, welcome. I'm very pleased to be here. Been to your conference, I think, from the beginning, and it's always a joy. Too bad I can't see people this year.
Right. Well, thanks so much. So if we can start off to talk about just a little bit for our audience, can you just give us a kind of your view of the best definition of what performance support really means, and where it fits into workplace learning?
To me, the focus that I've had is always to look at it as a solution to an issue, which is how do you get people who don't know how to do something to be able to perform their duties, their tasks, responsibilities in the quickest possible time with the least amount of effort. So the focus is not, it focuses on the actual performance. How do we enable their performance? It's not on how do we teach them, what do we tell them in order to be able to do it, but the focus is on performance. And it becomes a process of not just telling somebody how to do something. It's no longer a teaching role. The role is an enabling role. How do we make it possible and easier and facilitate their doing the responsibilities, rather than how do we teach them and tell them and then they go off and hope they remember what we taught them and fumble around for years trying to figure it out. So it's basically an enabling role.
Well, great. So given the situation that we're in now, companies have moved to do some more performance support than in the past. It's been growing ever too slowly. But given where we are now, we're at a time of change as everybody's working remotely. Things have suddenly changed. So when you think about how things may change, what's on your mind these days?
Well, it seems to me that so many things are going to change. They have to change because you can't do business the same way. Maybe eventually get back to some things we've done, but anything involved how workers work, where they work, interactions, what products we sell, what people want, all that's going to change. And since what it's going to mean is that everybody in our organization is going to be a novice, the people trying to figure out what the organization is going to do. And secondly, the people who are in the organization, particularly those that you are, if you want to call it reboarding, who have been furloughed, who have gone for a period of time, now they're coming back, they're going to be coming back to a different world. And how are you going to quickly get those people to function in the new world that they have to function with? And the methodologies we generally use are methodologies of training, so on the idea that we're going to tell somebody how to do it and then practice maybe to do it, and maybe somewhere down the line they'll be able to absorb it and be able to do the work. So my interest is there a better way in which you can take novices, get them up running and performing effectively than by the normal method, which is you have to teach them first, and then once they've learned it, then they'll be able to do it. So for me, that's performance support. And for me, the model that makes sense that I've been playing more with the last year or so has been the concept of a recipe. What a recipe does is take someone who does not know how to cook a particular dish or meal, and it guides you through that process, tells you what to get, what ingredients you need, does all that planning up front, enables you to do it, and then you can do and present the meal to family and friends in the evening without poisoning them. All of that is done without a single bit of what we call training. It's not designed to, Betty Crocker doesn't exist actually, but was a marketing figure. The whole purpose of what she did, the recipes that they produced, was for the harried housewife in those days, from the 20s on up to the 50s and 60s. The women were housewives, personally. Her market was them, and it wasn't, I'm going to teach them how to be cooks. The market of the recipes and so on was, I am going to enable them to cook a good meal for her husband this evening. Entirely on the performance. And once you shift to that, then shifts what you do. That means the learning, which is going to take place, is not going to take place up front. It's going to take place as you are doing the work. And so you're making that whole shift away from, I got to know before I do. It's now doing produces the learning. Learning is a byproduct then of the doing. There's some very interesting research going on in product marketing and innovation. And one of the people that was involved now was Clayton Christensen, no relationship, at the Harvard Business School, unfortunately passed away a couple of months ago. And it's a thing called jobs to be done theory. And there's several people around it. Now it's called jobs theory and so on. The idea is that what our audience wants. He's talking about marketing and products and how do you add, update and upgrade a computer application you may be selling. What features do you put in? That the key to understanding that is to understand what it is that the worker or the person wants. The person doesn't want to get something that they really want to rent the information, in a sense, rent the tools. They don't want to have to memorize things or spend investment in it. And it's a great quote from Theodore Levitt many years ago, in terms of what people want and customers want. Again, we're talking about customer market. What customers want, they don't want a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. What our workers want is not to learn how to do something. They want the damn job done and off their desk. And when we understand that, then we begin to understand why are we training them when they don't really want the training, they want the job done. And our focus has to be how do we enable them to get the job done and not worry about, oh, what do we teach them? What do they walk away with? What do they know? Can they get the job done? Because that is what they want more than anything else.
Yeah. Can you give us a couple more, maybe another example of performance support in the workplace where you've really, seen it, created something that really worked and solved a particular workplace or performance support problem?
Well, I think you have to look at the support that you provide. I think we tend to look at it, it's just knowledge. So how do I do a particular thing? Again, it's how you tell me how to do it. The advantage of having it right there is that it becomes a see and do rather than see, memorize, hope I remember, do it later. It's right there immediately at the point at which you do it. But a lot of, if you get back to the concept of enabling, a lot of it involves, well, how do you structure the things that people do in order to avoid complications and problems? So it's like a GPS functioning and it takes you all the way through the workflow. And it's the same thing. If you don't have the GPS on, it doesn't do you any good. And if you try to use your GPS or Google as you're driving over the cliff and saying, how do I avoid driving over the cliff? It's a little bit too late. So having the workflow not only enables us to provide them with information at the point in which it would be useful for them to have that information, those who need it, those who don't, they just keep on going. But that you can structure the work in such a way that it changes the way you do it. A great quote from Buckminster Fuller is that if you want to teach somebody, if you want somebody to think and act differently, you don't teach them to think and act differently. You give them the tool, the use of which requires them to think and act differently. So if in order to build something, I give you a form or a template or a structure that says this is how it should be done, and your job becomes, part of that becomes completing that form or structure, you then are going to be able to execute that in a far different way. A good example is I've done work with how do you run an effective meeting? The key part to running an effective meeting is not how good you are negotiating with people in the middle of the meeting. It's how do you set up the agenda? So the structure of the agenda drives the meeting, and the agenda structure is thinking, how can we prevent and avoid some of the basic problems that will occur in the meeting?
So one more question. As we're looking at the world that we're in now, how do you see performance support changing and playing a bigger role in this sudden new world where companies are working remotely and not having classroom training events and maybe having fewer classroom events? So where do you see the possibilities for change?
Well, my ability to prognosis is rather weak, considering I've been pushing this for a good 30 years and still hasn't happened what I thought it would have, because it makes so much sense to me. I think organizations are going to flounder if they can't find a better way of getting these people back on board. And you can't rely on just talking and so on. Social media is great, but then it still takes a lot of time. It's very unstructured, and there are things that people are going to need to do that they're not going to be able to do effectively. Whether or not the change is enough so that people stop looking at the basic core is to begin to realize that learning up, you don't need to learn before you do, that you can enable people to do something without that. So can they grasp that concept And given that, there's all kinds of ways they can begin to do things to think in those terms. If they think about the performance, what's the outcome, the measurable outcome to do the job and do it effectively in this way, or that, whatever it is, then your focus has to be on something different. It's not going to be training. And if they look at, everybody has a million apps on their phone, and most of them are basically the same thing. They're performance support in the sense that they enable people to do something they couldn't do without the app. With performance support, it involves more knowledge of understanding something. Perhaps it's more of a knowledge app, but it's basically an app. And once we understand that what you've got on the phone, how that helps you, that this kind of a knowledge app, which can help structure the job, but also give you the knowledge that you need, is the way to do it. People will be going to that. It may be that much of the stuff becomes things that one gets totally external of their organization that they're in. I don't know if organizations are ready to grasp that or can make that change, because they have not done so effectively in 30 years or so we've been talking about this. The key thing is you have to look at what is the performance and how do we get to the point. You start by that point, that we want to enable effective performance, and what is that performance? And it winds up being as much by role as anything else. Our training has tended to become very generic in the last number of years. It's become HRified in a way, and it becomes skills and attitudes and attributes as opposed to doing the actual jobs. But if you understand it's job performance and something has to be done, it's focusing on that and saying, okay, how can we enable that is the starting point. And once you begin to do that, you begin to, I think a lot of things begin to open up. Related to, I'm doing a little workshop now at ATD on these kinds of things, and people grasp the basic change of, no, I don't have to teach them up front. I can set it up so they can do it, and they will learn as a byproduct of that. Once you grasp that, then it becomes, oh, this and this become more obvious. So it's getting into that core understanding of it. Otherwise, it becomes, oh, well, let's give them a little help here, a little bit. The same thing we've been doing, and it doesn't get them, any further. I mean, the idea that the popularity of micro-learning, which currently is part of a performance support system structured within the workflow of the job, is very powerful. But to be selling it as something, well, it's a little bite-sized chunk, and so I can get it and do it in 2 minutes, and gee, I'll learn it better, remember it better 6 months from now, is absolutely absurd. And the basic concept is you need that information at the point in which you're doing it, and you need it within the structure of the workflow so you can be able to get the exact stuff that you need in order to be able to do it. We'll have to see how that works out. And there's enough people talking about it. I think if people, the wheels of the organizations can change quickly, but I think they're going to have to. So they're going to have to do something, but I'm not sure exactly where it'll come out.
Yeah, we're at an interesting point. There's a lot of possibility and a lot of different ways things can go from here. And I'd certainly love to see some widespread change in the way that learning and performance is designed, and take advantage of some of the technology that we have and can build and all those things. And so it's probably a good time to wrap up. It's been great talking to you, Hal. I want to thank you for spending time to talk through this. And it's been great talking to you as always. So thanks once again.
Thank you.